Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Movie Night. Here with me today is a very special man to me. It's Odysseus Kalantaridis. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and this episode we'll be talking about a film that Odysseus feels particularly passionate about, and as do I, for slightly different reasons. We're talking about The Hunger Games, based on the book by whoever, and starring Jennifer Lawrence, one of her proper debuts. But now she's a big name actor. So, Odysseus, why don't you tell me a little bit about why Hunger Games is so good?
I think it's a very good movie. I think that it has a decent plot. I think the books are excellent. You don't top the New York. I believe it was the New York Times for I think well over 100 weeks, as far as I'm aware. For no reason. And so I think that goes without saying that it's a decent plot, and there was lots of action. I think that the acting was fairly good in this. I think that, I would just clarify, we're not talking about the trilogy. We're talking about
it's just the first
the Hunger Games itself, the film. And yeah, I think that the first film was very, very good. I think that it was well acted, and it was very well made. I know that the director was very passionate about the actual film. I believe that he read through it in overnight and then applied for the job or something like that. So yeah, I think that it's a very well made, well written film.
Well, thank you. I would disagree on many levels.
I think I more need to attack your points rather than create my own interview.
Okay, yeah. So let's backtrack a bit.
Go one by one.
I read the book first, then I watched the film. Didn't really care for either, to be honest. But let's keep off topic of the books because they're not particularly relevant to this.
Okay. It's the movie night, not book night.
It's the movie night, not book night, indeed. I think the film has... The plot is contrived. I think the acting is average. I think the story is... I've already said that, contrived. The action is poorly choreographed. And there's not very kind of engaging in a way.
Explain your problem with the plot.
Well, let's start with the plot. A lot of films like this get popularity because of their premise. It happened with The Purge, which turned out to be terrible.
Fantastic.
Okay, we'll get on. Let's not get on topic. A lot of films get this popularity because of their premise. Now, the premise of this one is, granted, quite interesting, although nothing that has not been done before. The idea of kind of dystopian battle royale.
In which other film?
Royale.
Does everyone get killed in the Hunger Games?
Battle Royale.
There actually is a Hunger Games.
There's a movie called Battle Royale, which I'm pretty sure this movie is based on in some degree, or the book was based on, or it was copying from it, or Death Race, or anything that's... There's been plenty of examples of films with the premise of a battle royale. I guess the one thing that's slightly different is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been a battle royale with kids, which is kind of messed up if you think about it, especially when considering this film is at 12.
You're wrong, so I will correct you because they're typically only from a certain age, and there are certainly films where things happen to children. Obviously, it's just not violence. It's not like it's something
I'm not saying
particularly graphic.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a flaw. I'm saying that's what's unique about it. I was giving it praise, and I think the book kind of capitalised on that, but the film definitely did not. Okay, the film is a 12, which should point you. There is actually an adult version of this that happened before. No, not that kind of adult. It was like a 15 or an 18 or something. So yes, kids in a battle royale. It's a seamless cut there. So I think the film does not capitalise on the fact that in its unique setting, in that it's quite a bloody harrowing thing for kids to be set in a situation where they have to kill other kids to survive. But it's a 12, and every action scene you know, any time there's any character killed, it's never on screen. It's always just.
What I want to know is how come, like, isn't it in the first, like, by the way, I'm Albert Jennings. You may remember me from previous.
Name and where you're
issues
from,
of the movie,
please.
Why, you know, is it the first like 3 or 4 districts that like train all their lives to be in Hunger Games?
That's another thing as well.
Why are they so shit at fighting? It's honestly, it's a good question.
No, why are they so good at fighting?
They all get just killed.
Yeah, but
and Katniss, who's never fought in
Yeah.
her life properly.
No, right. Let
she
me
has a
explain.
bow.
No,
She
it's-
learned how
it's
to
right.
use her bow.
Okay, so to explain the problems here, so first of all, the ones from District 2 and 10 or something like that, the ones that train them, they always do typically well, they all get together.
So do they volunteer?
Yes.
So why don't they just do that with other districts? Why don't you get one buff guy?
No, let me explain why. It's because basically, so for example, District 12, another district like District 2, they sort of are sympathetic to the capital, and so they're willing to go by the way that it is. In District 12, they are sort of, they're independent, it's a completely different
I
culture.
thought the whole
They're
point was their
poorer.
spirit was
They're-
broken by their constant being, you know.
No, well, the thing is, that's the point though, and they give up to the system, and so they do.
So
what
why
you
don't they
say.
train someone?
However, in District 12 they don't, because District 12 are completely rebellious and they don't want to accept the way in which the capital imposes life. And as to why Katniss is good, it's because she has acquired skills which are like not just in the Hunger Games, but typically a very good thing to have rather than trained skills. And so she's been killing things with a bow all her life. She has an excellent aim, and you can't really say that that's not a legitimate thing.
Okay,
'Cause
fine.
real hunters who use bow and arrows can also have excellent aim. So that's really
Are
good.
we clarifying? Are we just talking about the first film?
Yeah, it's just the first.
Just the first film. Well, I would say that the first film is one of my favourite of the films. I've read all the books as well, and I really like the third book. But I think that they made that.
Oh, 3 parts or whatever.
Well, yeah, the third book is really good, but the way it's split up into the 2 films at the end is
Yeah.
really weird.
This is true.
It makes it a bit too long, really. It's like The Hobbit.
Yeah,
The
The Hobbit
Hobbit
was
is
a
just
joke.
incredibly
It's
long.
a
It's
terrible trend in cinema that has to stop.
Yeah,
I'm
this
sick
is
of
true.
paying
Splitting
3
up-
times for
splitting
one
up
film.
films.
No,
It's
I think,
incredibly
like,
long.
for example,
They are.
I mean, nothing, I'm sure you will agree, because I've read all 3 books as well, and I think that the third one is entirely, like, they did it just for the money, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Because
It's a good
nothing
they're
happens
all
in the
good.
first
Can I
half
just
hour,
say-
does it?
No,
In the
nothing
second
much.
film,
She's
absolutely
just
nothing.
moping around
Yeah.
about how District 3 got destroyed.
Can I just
Anyway, back
say,
to the first
no,
film.
yes, back to the first film. So you said, so are you seriously suggesting the whole first first act of the film is showing how desperate, how hungry, how impoverished the District 12 is? Are you seriously saying they're so rebellious that they wouldn't use the opportunity to get more food and actually survive? Because that would be my human nature, and I think anyone would do that.
No, they do. 2 things. First of all, they do survive, and second of all, like you'd actually notice that they do that. Like a lot of people have their names in. I know Katniss. If you actually look at it, she has
You
her
pay
name
to have
in
it
for
in-
Tessa.
Yeah, you pay to have it in more
she
time.
does that.
So why wouldn't
She
you just
does
get
that,
one
so-
guy who
right.
puts his name in like 1,000 times, make him really buff and train him, and then he's treated like a
Because
hero
that's
for
different,
his
'cause
life.
it's different because that's like they do. As I said, they do that in the ones that are sympathetic, but they don't want to accept.
But they do accept it.
district. They don't.
If they didn't want it to
District
accept it, they would have rebelled
District
again.
12 do not accept because the thing is they can't.
They do accept
no,
it.
No, Ed, can I actually make my point?
Fine.
It's like the podcast. here.
It's like the podcast. I'm not usually the one who argues.
Anyway,
as well.
so the thing is, basically, they have. You can't do a flat-out rebellion. A rebellion won't work. It's kind of like how some people do protest. They're not making a huge stand, but just doing a symbol which represents protest. And because they're saying we don't want to live by the way the capital tells us to, and we're not going to play into their game. And Peter pretty much says that himself in the way when he talks about how he wants to die in the games. That is why they do it differently, because they don't accept the capital's way, but they can't do a full-on rebellion like you say, because it's completely unrealistic.
But they are playing by the game, that's what I mean. And
They're not.
They seem so desperate that it seems kind of trivial to be like, oh, we're not playing
No,
by your
because-
game, but you are.
No, because the thing is, they accept it, and they do what they have to do, but to actually go out and train in the way that the capital would want them to, and to actively participate in that way, that is what they stop themselves from doing.
Yeah, but
That's the
all they're
difference.
accomplishing is hampering themselves because everyone else trains.
No, not everyone else.
They're not
Only
accomplishing
the
any
few that are-
statement.
Only the few people that are actually. It's not making a statement. It's not going into it the way they are. They're not actually making a protest. They're just in themselves not participating in the way that they supposedly should.
It makes sense in a poetic way, but not in a realistic way.
To bring it back to the film itself,
Yeah.
in terms of like characterization, I think that all of the sort of main actors and actresses do a decent job.
Yeah.
I think specifically, I'd like to highlight President Snow. I think the guy who plays him, Donald Sutherland, he's having a right ball, making it as evil as he can.
He doesn't look evil though. That's my one problem.
Oh,
he
come
acts
on.
evil,
He
but
looks
It
evil.
looks like Santa Claus. That's all I could think of the whole
The
time.
thing is, I mean, one thing that I would say is I think that
Touch it.
Jennifer
Certain
Lawrence,
samples can be-
Jennifer Lawrence is very good in the first film. I seem to remember certain parts of the third film. Like, I think we know that two people we were sat watching the film with didn't like the first bit of acting. Like, I think that there are parts which she sort of loses a bit, but generally, I would say in the first film, which is what we're talking about, the acting is excellent.
I wouldn't
They
go
all,
as
they
that
all,
far.
they all capture the characters well. When you,
But they have
having
no
read the
characters.
books.
The only person I
Having
think,
read the books, they do.
I have read the books, and they don't have any character. Or at least they don't in the film. They have no real character or no.
no, I think you can tell very clearly Katniss, who whether it's with Prim, in a way, her mother or the black kid, who I kind of forgotten her name.
The black kid.
Oh, what is she?
Oh, the one who dies.
Rue, that's it, Rue. Like, she does adopt the motherly figure, and it's clear. And I think that, in the same way, Peter sort of adopts the quietly compassionate, because I think that it would be very easy in a role like Peter to milk everything he does and be overly romantic, but I think he's just sort of quietly romantic and sort of quietly sympathetic and compassionate, and I think he does that really well. I think that similarly, the way that Gale is, it's just none of it is over milked, but you can see it with all of them. If you see what
I
I'm
think
saying.
that it's very over milked. I think
Is
the messages about her becoming accepting motherhood are very hand fisted. The part where she lays Rue's body on a bed of roses.
Oh, that's
is
a beautiful moment.
Sickening. I'm just kidding. It was just very such hand-fisted, very low common denominator, and that's what all these teen fiction things are. They're just low. It's not necessarily a bad thing, I have to say, but there's so much of it, and it's just so low-hanging fruit, so common denominator that
think
it's
it
hard
was-
to respect.
I like personally for me, I like the sort of world that is created through the thing.
Yeah.
I quite like the way that the author's gone to a lot of trouble. Well, the author of the book.
Yeah,
director of
the
film has gone to a lot
yeah.
of trouble to make this world believable, and you have to go into the film thinking that this is a book written, aimed at teenagers.
Yeah.
It's not the highest brow film that's ever been made. It's not The
not-
Godfather or anything.
I know, but I'm not saying it's
It's just a
necessarily a bad
decent-
thing.
It's just a decent film.
I know, but things like aimed at teenagers can be well made and also have depth. I mean,
I think that this is one of them.
Yeah, I think it is well
I don't
made.
think I think the world building in the book is a lot better. I don't think the world building in the film.
I think-
I don't understand why, other than the fact that they're rich and they're arseholes, I don't understand why the capital is so cartoonishly evil and they wear such ridiculous outfits.
It is
Where-
true.
I'll give you that.
It is true to say that the sort of distinction between good and evil is
Yes.
Can I say
very
though, I
black
think
and white.
that, like, talking of world building, I think that sometimes that is enough. And some people, I think that some things actually just take having a different world and really use that and run with it. I mean, it's a really strange parallel, but I remember the one thing that this really reminds me of is I remember watching Capital on the BBC.
Oh yes,
That had so little drama, but I loved it so much because it was this world and it felt so separate and so sort of secretive.
I think we're talking about a different show.
Capital, don't you remember?
Capital, the one about
the like banker and stuff like that.
banker.
Anyway,
Anyway,
that
not
one
get off
sort of
topic.
takes an approach of a very separate world that feels very different. And
I think that
this one, can I just
yeah,
finish? And I
go
think
on,
this is
yeah.
different because this has the drama as well. It has the characters, and I think that I think that to put both elements and because it, as I mentioned, the parallel of Capital, that does it really, really well, but only does that. I think this does this pretty well, but then also does a pretty good story as well, which I think is why you have that slight lack of quality, if you like, with the world building.
I think that you've got to be careful when you build a whole world, not to just spend all your time explaining the finer details of all the laws. It's the same with the Harry Potter films, for example, the Harry Potter books. You could spend all your you could have 7 books just dedicated to setting up why the world is the way it is and the history of the magical world, but instead you've just got to sort of come straight in and say, this
Yeah.
is how it is, this is what the Hunger Games are, deal with it.
To be fair, if you look at the super fans on the news, I'm pretty sure he could probably sell 7 books of explaining it, and
I
people will be
agree.
obsessed with that.
I
Yeah,
agree
that's true.
completely. I
That's
think
true.
world building is something, and especially in cinema, is something that either you have to do very well, you have to do very sophisticatedly, or you have to kind of just ignore it. But this does not. I don't think this. It's fair to say this trades drama for world building. I think there's neither. Well, very little of each.
I would completely disagree with
First
that.
of all, can I just say this?
Yeah.
I'll just say first of all that it does the most cliche opening where it literally just explains the premise, and Katniss is talking over a black screen or whatever, saying what the Hunger Games are in the most kind of boring way, that no kind of contextual clues, no kind of setting up through conversation naturally,
Oh, I can
just
imagine you
shove it
throwing-
in the audience's face.
I can imagine you throwing stuff at the screen whilst they do that.
It's just stupid, and it takes no effort. It takes no effort to write something like that. Obviously, it takes effort to write the world, but actually implementing it into that kind of into dialogue, into contextual cues, as I said, is something that you should aim for. You shouldn't just aim to just monologue at the audience.
But I think that it's different because, first of all, I completely disagree when you say that there has to be a really well done sort of world creation.
I
think
said
that.
I said I didn't need
No,
it.
I disagree. I think that near enough any film, unless maybe it's based on a true story or other specific different films, I think pretty much every film has to have a world created about it. Even something you mentioned, The Purge, even something as simple as that. Yeah,
But not
if
all.
there's not that big a difference, if it's still a modern world in Britain or America that's fairly similar, you still have to bring people into that. Because I think that watching a film, you do separate yourself, I guess, and you really need to be into that film to properly enjoy it. And so that's what I would say about that.
But-
and
okay.
Here
Can I just say, think of. I agree. You need to set up a world, but you need to understand the difference between writing and narrative. Narrative can be expressed in any way.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard "show don't tell"? It's a very simple cinematic trick. You're supposed to show the audience. You're not
That's what they
supposed to
teach in
tell.
B-Tech drama.
Yes, well, they teach me in B-Tech drama. You're not supposed to treat the audience like they're an idiot, because they're not. Teenagers aren't idiots, even if Albert likes to think they are, because they're aimed at them.
That's not
I
what I-
think Albert said that.
He
No,
said
that's not what I meant.
It's not the most highbrow thing because it's aimed at teenagers, and I think I
That's
do
it.
agree.
Yeah,
but-
that's true.
That's true.
Um,
It's not. It's just a decent film.
Anyway,
That's what I was.
Yes.
That'd be my summing up.
one of my
Go on, sorry.
favourite films. It's very very different, but it's called Withnail and I. Set in
What?
Withnail and I.
With Nundai.
Withnail
Withnail
and
and
I.
Oh, I thought you said.
Richard-
I thought you
Set
said,
in
I thought you said, like,
1969.
Hyundai or something.
Yeah, set in
Yeah.
1969.
Richard E. Grant.
No kind of like
69?
monologues. Yes, it's set in 1969. I'll just say it. Come on, we're having a serious podcast here. It's
good-
set in
it's a good
19.
film,
It's a
that.
very good film. You know
Yeah.
why? Because I don't know anything about that era. Well, I don't know. I know some things, but it's without any kind of hand-fisted political monologue by some character. That I understood what the setting was. I understand what kind of political overtones it had. I understand the kind of tone at the time, the kind of mood towards politics and the mood towards kind of life and the attitude towards the decade ending. But anyway, enough about that film. That's how you set up a world. It's not through someone talking over the film at the start.
No, I think that's a fair point to make out the introduction. But so, what other criticisms did you have?
If we're moving on from the plot, did I talk about the choreography?
No.
I brushed on it briefly. Who was Gary Ross? Really likes to shake the camera a lot, which is the laziest way to choreograph fight scenes because it means you don't actually have to do any work. You can just make people run around in it, and if you shake the camera, it looks like something's happening when it's actually not. The action scenes, if you watch them again, I think you'll realise that they're very badly choreographed, especially because they have to keep to this, as I said, pointless 12 rating so that they could rake in all these dumb kids so they could watch this film.
If I want to say, I think that in regards to this, that with the action, I guess it's fairly difficult because it's very graphically described in the book. For example, the Tracker Jackers and the reaction from that. Like, I would agree that isn't particularly well done, but they have fairly little choice. And
No, they don't.
the thing is, no, how can you?
Because you
like,
shy
how can
away.
you
That's
recreate-
you're
No,
encouraging
I'm not
people to
saying-
shy away from.
It's not about shying away. Some things are just practically impossible. The
What do you
descriptions
mean?
are almost, because you need to bear in mind this is out of the regular human universe completely, and so it's not necessarily going to be overly sort of easy to recreate. Which means that yes, there will be some problems with some of the things, like you can't do certain things, and I think that in terms of the action, they had to do it in a way that because this is, I think the 12 thing is its best and worst part of the film in that it does stop it from being any other thing because it is any other film because it is different to any other film, and I think that if it was just do regular violence because as you said they're children and it is completely different violence to anything else. It's not like it's a stabbing or a shooting film like anything else, and so it needed to be different.
But it is a stabbing and shoot. It's a film that centres. The whole point of the film is to show the atrocity of the upper class in how they subject children to kill each other in gruesome and violent ways, and how they've been psychologically built up to think that that's okay. In the way that the people from District 1 or 2 or whatever run around saying, haha, this is fun. And that's an interesting concept. But the fact that you can't kind of have it both ways, you can't say that that's messed up and show, not show someone. You have to show the whole thing. You have to be unflinching.
A slight criticism I have would be about the plot. It's only a slight criticism. I think it's sort of a bit too overtly social commentary.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Very obviously social commentary.
In terms of reality shows are so bad, aren't they? This is what they're like. But I think that doesn't detract from the film itself.
No.
I think it's still. If you just ignore that, it's like ignoring that the Chronicles of Narnia is all about Jesus. It still stands up as a film, even if you don't know that Aslan's Jesus.
But it's such a central part of the film that it's kind of hard to ignore.
No, because I think that what the film is ultimately central on is
Rich people are bad.
No, I think that it was created. Obviously, it's based on the books. We can talk about what the book was created and why it was created, and it is a sort of compilation of many different things, including reality TV and the Iraq War and other things like that inspired the author to make this. And then on top of that, you have a director who basically created it because of how much he loved the book and how he wanted to make incorporate the violence in a way that was good. Because I think this could have made no sense. They could have sort of almost made it more PG style, if you like, but they also could have overdone it like how you wanted them to do and make it a 15.
I don't want them to do it for the sake of it. I
think that it has come together in a way that it had to, and I think that the film, they create a good world. They just don't explain that world in the best way.
Yeah, well, that's a flaw. That's a flaw then in the film. And also, can I just clarify? I don't want all films to be about blood gushing everywhere. If it's appropriate, then it should be in place. If you want to show the atrocities of, and also, if you want to show the atrocities of this kind of setting in this kind of dystopian future, you have to be realistic. Because otherwise, there's no way I can relate to it because it's so cartoonishly, safe and is so good and the rich people are bad.
But do you have to relate to it is the question.
Yeah, because it's a commentary on our world, so you have to kind of see parallels.
Could you not just watch it as any other sci-fi fantasy?
Well, you can, but it's, as I said, it's such a central part, and it's such heavy overtones of social commentary that it's pretty hard to ignore.
Well, look, they're pretty heavy overtones in Narnia about religion.
Not really.
No,
also,
but it's pretty heavy.
It's in a more fantastical world as well.
Well, this is meant to be a pretty fantastical
Yeah,
world.
and that's what I mean. It can't really decide. If it was satire, then
I don't think it's set out to be satire at all. I think it's just influenced by other things. So.
It's what I mean is, you either have to kind of I don't know what the director or really the author is trying to say. Is it trying to create like a satirical thing where everything's over the top and it makes you think and it's like gives you that sense of detachment that satire does, but also that makes kind of realization that it could be our world. But the problem with this is it's just so far gone from our world. I don't think that. there's ever going to be a situation where people will be that cartoonishly evil that they would just like to watch kids kill each other on TV. But if you're being over the top,
that's why it's a fantasy film.
yeah, I'm saying if it wants to be over the top, but then
Well, you talk about there would never be a time where there'll be people who are sort of fanatically evil. I think some people would say Donald Trump is fanatically evil.
but such a large portion of like the upper class would be so kind of distant from morals. All they like to do is drink wine and watch people kill each other.
You say that, but obviously some of them defect to the district. Some of them aren't happy with it, but I think that you need to bear in mind a number of things. One, you do have sympathisers. For example, I believe is it Cinder or something like that, the stylist for Katniss.
Oh, and yes, I do remember him.
He's sympathetic as well.
And then later on, there's the Philip Seymour Hoffman character, isn't there?
What?
Plutarch.
Yeah, he's sympathetic. You also have
Never forgotten.
You also have the person who gives refuge in the capital in the third film, and it's difficult to escape. Like, how do you escape a perfect world? They may even be hated in other districts, and on top of that, the sort of the places nearer to them are, in essence, fairly. Like I think that the further you go on, because I think that you basically go from District 12 to District 11 to 10 to their capital eventually. So 1, 2, and 4, as in they're different, but they're some of the richer ones. So I think that, and maybe how they'd be brought up in childhood, I think it does make sense. On top of that it's a fantasy, I don't think saying that it's unrealistic because they're all evil.
So what is it then? Is it a fantasy that's satirising the real world? Because you can't just say it's fantasy if it doesn't correlate with the real world, if it's trying to make a statement on the real world.
I would just say it was fantasy.
If it's fantasy, then that's fine. But it doesn't seem to be that. It seems to make very clear, heavy-handed overtones of the real world. So which is it?
No, I think that it's a bit of both, really, because it is, for example, set in North America. It's not done on a sort of different planet level, but there, it doesn't have, just because it doesn't have your easy to define. You can put in YouTube when you tag this.
I'm not saying it has to. I'm saying it's inconsistent.
It's a combination, and I think that
it's not a combination. It's inconsistent. It doesn't know what it wants to be.
Because it does know what it wants.
It
wants to be.
It wants to be satirical when it suits
because the thing is that no. Can I say why? I think the thing is that there are some films that are overly realistic, which gives a limited, I guess, if you like, poetic license. You've probably learned about that in your BTEC English. And then there's also and then there's also fantasy. But then if you take that too far, then it means that it has no sort of way of association, and you're going to be really aiming at the younger audiences because they're the only ones that are going to get into fantasy, and people like you will say it's unrealistic and stuff like that. So I think that having a bit of both is the only realistic way in which they could create an excellent film, which is what they've done.
Right, but okay, think of any kind of satire by nature. You make fantastical to kind of highlight, like caricature, you highlight certain areas and you kind of amplify them, which is what they do in this film. They make the elites cartoonishly evil, and then they make the poor people cartoonishly good. It's like Star Wars or something like that.
You say cartoonishly evil.
They are.
Which you've said a lot, but I don't think all of them are. Like
they are though.
Is no, but is the stylist? Even the president, who is apparently Santa Claus. Like actually, if they'd done it the way you wanted to make him look more evil, that would definitely be more cartoonishly evil. So, and then he is realistic. He says, "Let's not lie to each other." He sort of says that they're unrealistic. He makes criticism of the new thing, arguably for the benefit. He does seem to have some sense of relationship and care with Katniss, so it demonstrates that it's not just cartoonishly evil. And also, for example, they don't all just have no care. I think a lot of people in the capital are some form of sympathisers. So yeah.
I just don't see kind of... It seems to want to parallel the real world, but it can't help itself. Like, when it doesn't fit, they just make stuff up, like...
I think that your criticism is that it's not absolute, which I don't think
That's not my criticism
at all. Because you're saying that it doesn't know what it wants to be.
It's inconsistent.
Too much. You see, the thing is, I think what you see as inconsistent is where we would have to agree to disagree, and I think that it's a combination of different things. Because I just don't think that it's inconsistent to say that it's a combination of two things, and it's not just a easily brandable fantasy or
But it is easy to
reality or something like that. It
Anyway.
is a mixture of different things.
Anyway, we'll
Kind
move
of like
on. We'll
comic
move on
horror.
because we're going to get stuck in this rut for quite a while otherwise. Is there anything else? Oh, yes, there's a few kind of minor things. So,
a few potholes
Why-
now we've gone over the speed bumps.
why is there a painting station in the training arena? Why does Peter learn how to paint?
Camouflage.
It's camouflage.
Camouflage, yeah.
Yeah.
So
if
he
you
so he had time to
maybe
paint
if you
himself.
maybe if you
He did without a mirror.
Maybe if you paid attention to the film, you would know this. And you say without a mirror, it's by a lake, and you can see himself in a lake.
Are you seriously suggesting that he would have had time, or he did have time apparently, to paint his face to look exactly like a rock, and lie there for hours without any water while he was bleeding, and he would just be fine and no one would see him?
Well, there are two things. First of all, is because your criticism is he's not there for long enough to do his face, but he's there so long that he's not got water. Well, to not have water, it'll be like 3 days or something. So you're saying that 3 days
he's
isn't
bleeding.
a long time. So we can dismiss the criticism of not having enough time to camouflage his face. So
Well, I'm saying
This
I'm
means-
saying he does have enough time, but what if someone saw him
so
or
you say
somebody?
people they didn't see him. It's a pretty big arena.
So it's just convenience then,
It's
isn't
a
it?
pretty big arena.
It's a plot
And
convenience.
I believe he was near water, so he may have had some sort of water. I think he did use something to stop himself from bleeding, which wasn't properly dressed, which means he could survive that.
So
And
Katniss
he
could
was
snog
waiting
him.
for Katniss. So yeah. So
Give him a nice smooch. Oh yeah, and the weird
That's-
pedo message from Hugo or whatever his name was.
what?
Do you remember when they kissed and then she went outside to read the message and it says you call that a kiss or something?
No, it was from Hamish.
Oh, whatever his name is. He
No,
began
that
with an
wasn't
H.
pedo.
It was a pedo. He was watching it and he was.
criticism?
It's not a criticism. It's just a joke. I had something else as well. Why is he a cake decorator, if he's in the poorest district?
For a number
He
of
said he was a
reasons.
cake
Number
decorator.
one, he's not. He's a baker, which includes
Cake
some
decorating.
cake decorating. First of all, cake decorating is not that like luxurious or rich. a
So
thing
why
to
is he
do.
so good at it?
No, because it's not that luxurious a thing to do. It's in like I'm sure.
It is a pretty luxurious thing
No,
to do. There's a
you're saying
food
that-
shortage. Why is he
No,
decorating
no,
cakes? He should be making them.
Two things. Right, first of all, as to why he has this thing is because obviously you have victors, you have peacemakers, you have visitors from the capital, etc. So there is a market for it. And also, I mean, it's not that luxurious to have decorated cakes. Like people.
It is, because they're having a
No,
food shortage.
But it's no, because first of
They
all,
can't have
the
enough
food-
to eat, but they have
no,
enough to
the food-
decorate.
The food shortage is largely down to individuals not having enough food, rather than the district itself. It's from poor harvests on occasion. The place itself does actually have enough food on a regular basis.
Well, that's not
And
what it
also-
implied.
I think when we're
Can I just point out-
evaluating
can I
this
just
film,
point
we're
out-
getting quite bogged down.
Can I just point out that cake decorating is not that luxurious, though, and that
It is
people
pretty.
no, as in people can put icing on a cake. It's not that mad.
Yeah, but why would they have cake in the first
Like,
place?
because
They're-
it
but
doesn't fucking
it does
matter.
matter.
The key things about evaluating this film as to whether or not
We paused it.
Oh, he's ruined.
Hello.
We apologise for the second one.
Apologise for the
The
inconvenience.
first one because there were people outside that were causing the problem. This time it's people inside that
Yeah.
were causing the problem.
There's a host of We Can Apologise. So anyway, we're at the 30 minutes marks now, so maybe we should wrap up.
let's wrap up.
Is there anything else you would like to say?
How many stars out of 5 would we each give it?
Well,
Starting with Ed.
before that, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I have nothing else I'd like to add. Sorry,
just-
Anne, I didn't mean to comment.
No, it's all right.
I'd like to give my stars. I'm desperate.
Okay.
Yeah, no, all I would say is I think it's excellent, and we'll go to the reviews now. So, Edward.
Stars.
Well, I would not recommend it. I
Sorry.
would have to give. Well, the set and the costume design are very good. The lighting is very good, so I would have to give it a 3 out of 10.
Out of 10?
Yes.
No, it's a 3 out of 5.
Oh, okay.
It's
Then
fine.
in that
One
case,
and a half
1.5 then, yes.
Right, come on, Albert.
I would give it 4 stars personally,
Ooh.
and I'd recommend it because because I gave the Blues Brothers 3.5 last time, and I think that this is slightly better than the Blues Brothers just because of just in terms of the plot structure. This also goes a lot on what I think about the book, of course, as well, because I did really love the book.
Let's
So.
keep it on the
Can
topic
I
of
just
the
ask-
But on the film, I did like it.
May I ask what you gave Ricky Gervais' film?
Ricky Gervais. I don't remember.
Do you not remember? Go on.
I don't
I
remember.
don't think they gave proper stars. That was
Okay.
No,
when they
that was
actually
just when I
introduced-
I like to say I don't really like the System of Star. I just like to say if I
Okay.
recommend
So
it.
what
or
would
not.
you have given the Ricky Gervais then?
3.5 or so.
Oh, okay. So
I don't want to be over
Okay,
generous.
then I will give it 4 stars as a film, 5 stars as a teen film.
Right, fair enough.
And I would say I would recommend the film, but I would definitely
recommend the film.
recommend the books.
Yeah, I'd recommend the books.
I would recommend the book slightly more. Although
I
Slightly
think
more
the,
than the
the
film.
books were excellent. The film was very good. I think is a
Yeah,
good way of
that's
putting it.
fair. That's fair. Fair
Anyway,
Right.
thank you very much for that,
Thank you.
joining us on this movie night. Goodbye from Odysseus,
Goodbye.
and bye from Albert.
Goodbye. I joined later. But
It's all right.
It's-
Stop it. Stop. Thank you. And goodbye from me. Goodbye. Oddy, I swear to God.